Guys, wait till you see what we discovered when we tested Taylor Martin's Clingman.
You can run on for a long time, run on for a long time, run on for a long time. Sooner or later, gonna let you down. Sooner or later, gonna let you down. Tell that long-time liar, go and tell that midnight rider, tell the rambler and the gambler and the backslider, tell her the gun.
Now you're just showing off.
I gotta grab a single-handed. Hey guys, I'm Tyler with EDC Central, and today we are testing the Taylor Martin design by CIVIVI. It's the Clingman, and we're gonna go ahead and put it through a series of tests. Now keep in mind, this is not a durability test, this is not a torture test, this is like an everyday use test. If you carry this knife on you for a series of time, what kind of results could you expect? And that's gonna be our goal today. All right, so to start out our test, we're gonna take the Clingman fresh out of the box. We haven't cut anything with this, and we're gonna throw it on the knife sharpness tester. And then once we're done with that, we're gonna put it through a series of cutting tests, and then we'll retest it and see what we end up with and give you our overall thoughts and review. So Nitro V steel, it's good overall steel. A lot of people use it on chef knives, fillet knives, self-defense knives, everyday carry knives. So it's a very, very common steel in the knife making world. So let's test it out. Again, factory 261. So basically anything but under 300 is really sharp. 2 to 300 is where you're going to find most of your hunting knives, your EDC knives, those kinds of things. Under 200 is where you're going to start getting into more like a scalpel or a razor. So for that to throw a 261, that's right up there with a lot of Benchmades, a lot of MKCs, other knives that we've tested on that particular tester. All right guys, so again, we haven't cut anything with this yet. We just did a knife sharpness tester. We are actually going to just slice some paper. Now, in the grand scheme of things, what this overall does is, sure, it tests sharpness, but really what you're looking for is to see if there is any sort of damage along the apex. That's what it's checking, because you don't actually need that sharp of a knife in the knife sharpness world to slice paper as far as like a variable scale. You need a edge or a apex, which is the part of your edge that comes together to make it actually sharp. You need something that's consistent and doesn't have any variables in it. That's where you get disruptions in the paper. So if you use a knife and you can't see with the human eye or see very easily that there's damage on the apex and you run it along paper, a lot of times you'll get a tear or some sort of disruptment, and that is because of something to do with your apex, or aka your edge. So again, factory. We got a little bit of wind here, so bear with me. I would say there's nothing really going on with this edge. I would say from the factory it's good. Like those little issues that we had there and there, that's me. You do have to hit it on a good angle or you're gonna have an issue. But like here and you've got to support the paper to a degree. So I would say overall, there's not really any issues with this edge out of the factory. No problems at all. All right, let's open up this bundle of and we're just getting, everyday tasks, right? So I always make a habit of starting at the bottom of the blade because then you get the full length of the blade. Cut right through before we even made it to the end. So that's great. Gonna make sure not to hit any nails because I don't think that's a fair test. None of us are, well, I hope none of us are purposely smacking our blades on nails, so. I was expecting this to get through this rope just a little easier. It doesn't seem to have a whole lot of forward cut, and that definitely is partially due to the blade design. With that hard pull up, you're not gonna get a whole lot of forward momentum. So you will have to kind of work back and forth. Obviously the belly of the blade here is where most of your cutting is going to be, because ergonomically you can't really get here when you're working on a flat surface. You're going to be cutting with that belly. But it does seem to struggle a little bit getting through that rope compared to maybe some other knives that we've tested. So I'm going to try down here more on the flat. That's going to obviously produce more of a leverage position. So this is not slicing, this is just pushing down. So that was actually a great result in my opinion. It did better than slicing, was just simply rocking and pushing. So it doesn't like this rope though overall. Again, we start with a factory edge. So we're gonna kind of work the whole blade so that we can get kind of an accurate test when we go back to the tester. Does much better. And the reason why it's doing better like that has more to do with the rope than the knife itself. When you're pushing down, you're compressing all those fibers that this rope is made out of. When you're going on an angle, those fibers can't push down against the table and compress. So you're dealing with a harder surface, a harder cut compared to this. So in all fairness to the knife, that's more of an ergonomic thing in the sense of how we, as the user, might use said knife, whatever knife that is. So let's just, for example, I carry a Kershaw Leak just because this is a Chinese model. In all fairness, they're nothing special. It honestly needs to get thrown on the stone. It's got a little bit of disruption in the edge, but it's still pretty dang sharp. So let's just comparison, because I have it. That is through, it's just got a couple fibers holding on. This knife I've carried for months, and I've cut things, a lot of things with this knife. So I'm actually a little surprised. I do think part of that has to do with the blade design. If you look at the blade design, this knife doesn't really have any belly as opposed to the Clingman. So you're gonna get a full leverage on that. But they're both about the same price point as well. But again, this knife has cut a lot of stuff. I use it every day. I do run it on a ceramic. Usually, unless I get a lot of apex damage, I run it just on a ceramic a few times, usually 5 to 10 times on each side, and then I bring that down to 1 on each side, and then it'll shave hair again and you're good to go. And it takes me 3 minutes. So yeah, this isn't really a comparison video, but just was curious since we were here, so it's good to know. All right, we all got to cut zip ties once in a while, right? So got a little zip tie here. Pretty easy. It's doing a good job. Say overall it's doing a very good job on those. And these are small zip ties. They're not big zip ties. There's not a whole lot of volume there for this knife to have to cut, but you know, we've all had to cut a zip tie off of something. And we didn't want to damage whatever the zip tie was on. So say you're cutting it off of a hose line that you don't want to puncture. So, and I'm gonna try not to cut. That's pretty good. That didn't require a whole lot of pressure. Now, you know, keep in mind when we talk about, you know, get into the physics aspect of it, like that zip tie has a lot of pressure on it and the knife is putting more pressure, so it doesn't take much, but it did a great job. Again, just for purposes. Okay. Let's go to some cardboard. I'm gonna pull some cardboard up here. Just gonna break apart this box real quick. Don't get mad at me. I cut towards myself on that one. You know, most guys, if they're doing like a cardboard test in their videos, they're going to do like 50 cuts or 100 cuts or something that's quite dramatic. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. You're testing the knife. I'm just not sure I'm going to go that far with it. Because in all reality, like, if you're cutting open boxes, you're usually cutting the tape on top, not actually the cardboard, just to get the box open. So, all right. So I think it did exceptional on the zip ties, exceptional on the cardboard, and you know, it's starting to look like a used knife a little bit. So let's grab a stick and let's whittle down a stick a little bit, and then we'll go back to a knife sharpness test and a paper test and see what we end up with. All right, so obviously I'm not pulling like 2x4 or 1x2 or something like that out, but I'm just grabbing something out of the woods here. You know, say we're out and we need to get shavings to start a fire and that kind of thing. It does seem to be, it's just not grabbing, it's deflecting a lot. You know, and this piece is a little wet on one side, it's dry on this side kind of thing. Just because why not? See, that's grabbing. I have to work harder. I got to push harder because it's grabbing. I can probably get more realistic pieces off of it. Like, see. And you could maybe make the argument that the Clingman took off a layer and now I'm getting more to the core. That might be a valid argument. Or is it? Yeah. Let's say it's overall performing kind of poor on that, I would say. Okay, so we just got done cutting the rope. We cut the zip ties. We did a paper test. We did an initial sharpness test on the tester, and we just tried to whittle some wood down, maybe representing a situation where maybe we got to start a fire out in the woods. It performed okay. It wasn't terrible, depending on the test. The rope, it did not perform that well, in my opinion. It required a lot of pressure to get through that rope, whether I was putting pressure down or whether I was slicing. Wood didn't really grab. It tried to deflect a lot, and that could have something to do with the Nitro V, but I don't think it is. I think it's more of a blade design. But paper test, it did great. Sharpness test, it was super sharp. But now that we've done all that, let's do a paper test again. Gonna make sure we got a clean edge. Okay, let's see if it is better. Getting a little bite about midway, depending. I think that could be just debris on the grind there. I don't think that's necessarily the actual apex or even an issue in the bevel. So I'm not going to contribute it to that. I'm going to say that I think it's held up overall, and I think if I cleaned that, which we may do. Okay, now we're clean. No excuses. That was me. Also me. It's just too cut up, guys. Okay, I do think, I would say it passed the paper test. I would just say that we had some variables there that weren't the knife's fault. So Action is still good. I wouldn't have suspected it wasn't. We didn't do any torture tests. Again, it's just a everyday carry kind of test. Like, it's really more of how well is that apex or edge going to hold up over time. That's really what we're trying to figure out here. We didn't do a crazy amount of cutting here. You know, we did a little bit with the rope, a little bit on zip ties, a little bit with the wood, a little bit on the cardboard, just your typical things, right? If you carry this every day, depending on what your job is and what you do, that might only represent a couple days of use. It might represent a couple months. But we're gonna go throw it back on the knife sharpness tester and see what it throws. Hey guys, if you're liking the video so far, as I sit here and play with the Clingman, I would say that it's probably a good idea that you just hit the subscribe button down on the bottom, hit the like button while you're at it, and if you think of it, share it with everybody you know, because I feel like it's a pretty good video. Everybody should know how well this knife's performing, right? And throw a comment down. Tell us what you like about our videos, tell us what you don't like, because we're here to improve and make better content for you guys. Thanks. Let's see what it throws. We're gonna try to do relatively the same spot for fairness. .456. Let's try it again, just to be sure. All right, so sorry it took a moment. We got to get the media back in place every time you cut it. So let's try again, same relative spot. 399. So we're in that 4 range, give or take. And basically 4 and up means the edge needs help. That's basically the chart shows anything 4 and up, the edge needs some attention. So it did dull it. It did dull out, which we kind of expect. I mean, you're cutting wood, cardboard, rope, zip ties. These are all things that are going to damage an apex, aka an edge. So I'm gonna go sharpen this at some point, and we'll see if we can get some, get that number better. I will say that is a perfect example of why paper testing is not a direct correlation to sharpness. It's a direct correlation to a point, because obviously it's got to be sharp enough to cut paper, but there is a range there where what you're really looking for is not sharpness, you're really looking for a consistent apex without disruption. And we got that on the second test, even though we're throwing a 400 compared to a 260. So big difference in sharpness if you look at the scale, but not a big difference in performance on the paper. So something to keep in mind whenever you're doing paper tests. All right guys, we just got done testing the Clingman by CIVIVI, a Taylor Martin design, and what did we discover? It's not a bad folder. It's not a bad EDC folder. Again, it's under $100. It excelled in some areas. It did not excel in other areas. Some of the tests that we did, which are pretty basic, I felt like it lacked a little. Some of the other tests that we did, I felt like it did exceptional. It did quite well. So overall, I think if you like this design and you want to get a folder under $100, consider it by all means. You're dealing with Nitro V, which is a great steel. Is it up there with like an S90V or a Magna Cut? Maybe not. You're probably gonna have to sharpen it a little more often. Heat treating is also an element there as well, and the factory apex is a factor as well. On a flip note, if you get a chance, go to Big Idea Design. We got a chance to meet those guys at Blade Show, Texas. There's an awesome group of guys. They got some awesome products. Everything they make is top notch. They've got good titanium products. I've got several of their knives that I paid for just because I like them. They weren't given to us. We still have yet to do some testing with them, but if you want to save some money on any of their products anywhere on their website, just type in the promotion code, do EDC Central _. You're going to save some money. You're going to help our channel so we can grow and bring you more content and more testing, because I would love to break knives at some point and not feel bad about it. But right now I feel too bad. I just feel like I can't break any knives. So go check them out, guys.
You can run on.